Well, the PENTAX K-3 Mark III is absolutely filled with controversy. There's haters, there's lovers, there's in-betweeners, there's on the fencers, but at the end of the day, one of the major controversies is the crop mode. You've got 1.3 time crop and 1.7 time crop. And the question always seems to be, should you crop in post or rely on the in-camera crop modes of 1.3 time and 1.7 time crop modes? What is the best thing to do? Well, I did some deep diving, and there's some interesting findings. For one, image size. The 1.3 and 1.7 time crop modes in camera actually produce a larger file size than you taking the full image and then cropping in post. That actually will give you a smaller file size. So there's something with the accelerator chip and how it handles processing in regards to doing the crop. Not sure exactly how that is working, but let's just dive into the video and you'll see everything for yourself. Okay, to kick things off, what we're going to actually take a look at first is if you look down here at the histogram, we're going to look at the lighting difference because that is something that has come up a number of times. People wonder if the exposure is different, if the lighting is different when you're using the crop modes versus not using the crop modes. So we're going to take a look at that. Now, look at this histogram here. This is the full image, okay? And now we're going to go to the 1.3 time crop in camera, and then will be the post-processed 1.3 time crop. So here is the histogram on the 1.3 time in camera crop. And now notice there isn't much difference when we go to the post-processed 1.3 time crop. They're pretty much the same. Very, very, very slight difference. And that's only because the crop that was done in post is in relation to the full image scene, which is a different histogram altogether. So let's just go back to the full, and you can see it is a remarkably different histogram, and that's because there's more information in this image because it's the full frame. So you've got this highlight here, and here, which is going to in turn change this histogram, as well as more area here that is darker. So this will be increased along the shadow area. And that's why there's differences in those histograms. And the same thing continues with the 1.7 time crop. So here's the in-camera 1.7 time crop. Look at the histogram, and now we'll go to the post-processed crop, which is pretty much the same. They're not that far off from each other. And we'll go to this scene here. So this is the full image, and you can see that histogram is pretty dark. I purposely underexposed this one to see if I would pick up on any changes in regards to the exposure. All the settings were the same. And here is the 1.3 time in-camera crop, and here is the 1.3 time post-processed crop. So these histograms are the same. I mean, there really is not much of a difference in the cropped histograms. So now let's take a look at the images in regards to out of focus area, aperture, that kind of, all that fun stuff. So let's do a direct comparison. So here we have the original image is on the left, and I'm going to be changing the images on the right. So here is the 1.3 time crop. And now let's zoom in to 100%. The out of focus area really is not that much different between the two. Let's zoom this out a little bit here to 50%. Yeah, there really isn't a whole lot of difference between these two in regards to the out of focus blur. There may be a ever so slight bit more blur on the cropped image. Let's go to 1.7. We'll bring that back to 50% here. And we'll take a look at that. So yeah, it looks to be ever so slightly more blurred on the 1.7 and 1.3 time crops. This is the 1.3 time post-processed crop on the right side here. So let's do a comparison now of that versus the in-camera crop. And there isn't really much of a difference at first glance between these two in regards to the out of focus blur. Again, it's very hard to tell. They're very, very, very similar. I mean, unless you're going in absolute 100%, you're not really going to see much of a difference. But what I did find interesting is in the actual, like for the images themselves, and this is what really threw me off. Let's bring this up here. Now, we'll go to the 1.3 time crop and we'll go into the properties. Let's take a look at the actual image size here. So it's 7.06 megs for the crop, right? For 1.3 time crop. And now let's look at the post-processed crop. And that is 3.98 megs. So interesting. Let's see what the actual 7.05 megs for 1.3 time in-camera crop versus 3.97 megs. Now they're both 4752 by 3168. There's no difference between the actual image size. So there is a lot more information retained in the in-camera crop. That's 4.19 megs. And the post-processed crop, same size, is 2.49 megs. So when you use the in-camera crop, you're actually retaining more information, more color information. I honestly did not expect that to happen at all. That was something completely different for me. I was not expecting that whatsoever. So now let's take a look at the 1.7 time crop versus the post-processed crop. Let's go all the way in. And again, there isn't much of a difference. The post-processed crop is here on the right side. The 1.7 time in-camera crop is on the left. And the 1.7 time crop may be just, again, very, very, very ever so slightly more background blown out. The bokeh seems to be a bit more ever so slightly in some spots it may seem more blurred than the post-processed crop. Very, very interesting. This is not, the results were not actually what I was expecting. Yeah, you can definitely see along here this is more blurred out. Because it's got sort of almost like a halo effect here versus more of a defined line here. But let's move on. So here is the full shot here. And we'll go to the 1.3 time in-camera crop. Bust this to 100%. And the 1.3 time crop, maybe there was a tad bit of haze, because here you can kind of see that there's heat haze. So the 1.3 time crop looks like it exaggerated the haze a little bit. So that's probably what happened here. However, the out of focus area doesn't seem to be much of a difference between these two at all. Not much difference. It's so negligible, I honestly would say that there really is no difference between the two. You're just getting a tighter shot, and due to the crop factor, you're getting that extra magnification. So here's the post-crop. And let's actually go back here and we'll do the 1.3 time in camera versus the post crop. Here we go. So post crop is on the left and the 1.3 time in camera crop is on the right. So let's zoom in to 100% and see what it's all about here. And yeah, there really isn't enough of a difference to me to really say one of these is much better than the other. Except for the fact that, as I showed, the amount of information that you retain for color fidelity and things like that, and most likely the dynamic range, would actually come out better in the in-camera crop. Why? No idea. I was not expecting that. Let's go to the 1.7 time crop here. And for the 1.7 time crop, let's see how much of a difference this made, if any. And yeah, maybe ever so slightly more background blurred or blown out. Ever so slightly. But again, it's so negligible, I really would chalk this up to they're about the same. They're really about the same. Okay, let's move on. Fit to window. Let's move to the next one. And let's do this one. Let's do a comparison of these. Okay, so let's do the 1.3 time in-camera crop. Yeah, really not much of a difference here at all. Not really much of a difference. Yeah, they're pretty much the same. Pretty much the same. It's really not a huge change in either of them. You're just getting more focused, no pun intended, because of the fact that it is cropped. Now let's move on to the 1.7 time crop. Let's compare 1.3 to 1.7. Okay. See if there's any major difference between these two. And doesn't really look like there's any difference between these two either. So yeah, there's no exposure difference. The exposures were the same. They came out the same. Neither one meters any differently than the other from what I could tell. I was using average metering, and that's really all there is to it. Yeah, so that was an interesting bit of testing. I was not expecting the results that actually did happen in regards to the various crop modes. A lot of people have said that the metering may be different or the lighting. I didn't find that to be an issue. Also, the out of focus areas, it's so minuscule. There really isn't much of a difference, but you're getting that extra crop factor. So if you don't have a teleconverter, this is a viable alternative, and it's not reducing your actual aperture. So you're actually allowing more light in, but you're just cropping out the edges on the image itself. So you're getting that extra zoom range effect, right? So yeah, using the 150-450 at 450 millimeters in 1.7 time crop mode gave an effective focal range, including the the APS-C factor of I think it was 930 millimeters. So quite a big jump. Yeah, quite a big jump. But that's it for this video. If you like the video, leave a like. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. And if you want to support the channel, if you've been here already, you know exactly what to do. But anyone else, I urge you to just read the description. All the information is there. And that's going to be it for me. I'm going to go. You'll see me on my next video. I'm out.